Hey, everybody. Nice to see you. It's Trish Carr at Women's Prosperity Network, and I am thrilled to have you here with me today for another episode of Sister to Sister, which is really a frank conversation around racism. It's one of those things that it's so easy to discuss concepts and argue about whether or not there's such a thing as white privilege or whether there is such a thing as systemic racism. We can always throw concepts on this table and talk about them. But when we talk about real people and real experiences, that's a whole nother level. And that's what this show is all about, is sharing experiences that people have had that highlight what is literally going on for most people of color in our country in particular. So my guest today, you're going to love her. She's quite international. She's lived all over the world. And I can't wait to introduce you to her. But first, before we get started, I want to invite you to click that. You see that little button that says share down there? You see that? Just go ahead and click that and share this to your page. Because the more of us that hear the conversation, the more of us that participate in having uncomfortable conversations about racism, the more we can open up, take off our blinders, and see things we may not have seen before. Before I get started with my guest today, I do want to recommend, again, this amazing book that I'm reading. Many of you may have already read it. It's called Caste: The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. In fact, it was an Oprah book choice for the last year, 2020. Thinking that was last year, yes, 2020. And this book so clearly lays out how the caste system that we in the U.S. live under. And she looks at India's caste system. She also looks at Germany's caste system, and she makes parallels to them to really show that what we have here is a caste system. You know, no matter how high or low you are on the rung, there's always somebody who is lower than you. And that's what humans tend to do. We put people in a caste. And one of the things that this is so easy to read, so I really recommend you get it, Caste. She was sharing, the author was sharing that a few years ago she met a Nigerian-born playwright. And the playwright came to a talk while they were in London together. And the playwright said to her, she said, you know, there are no Black people in Africa. Most Americans, weaned on the myth of drawable lines between human beings, have to sit with that statement. There are no Black people in Africa. It sounds nonsensical, I know, to our ears. Of course, there are Black people in Africa. The whole continent of Africa is full of Black people. How could anyone not see that, the author is saying to the playwright. And the playwright came back with, Africans are not Black. They are Igbo, Yoruba, Yue, Aksan, Nebele. They are not Black. They are just themselves. They are humans on the land. This is how they see themselves, and this is who they are. They don't identify as Black. They don't identify by their color. And one of the things here that she shares about is that the idea of race is a recent phenomenon in human history, a recent phenomenon, and that it actually was created by Europeans who came over to the United States so that they could develop the class and develop the caste. So the history of how even the term Caucasian was created is fascinating, and it really opens up our eyes to see that race is a social construct, and we are all living within that construct, and we are all socialized within that construct, and that is the basis and the foundation for racism right here in the United States. So I'm excited to talk today with my guest. My special guest today is a woman Jerry Blanchard. Her full name's Geraldine, but nobody calls her that. Jerry Blanchard. Blanchard. She was born in Haiti, which in and of itself, I can't wait to talk about her experience there. Haiti has been going through right now, even now, dealing with the destruction and the tragedy of another earthquake and everything that's happening there. So she actually left Haiti and moved to the U.S. Virgin Islands because of the political situation at the time in her country. And she went to several different schools. She went to Catholic University in Puerto Rico. She went to school in Daytona Beach. She's lived in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, Kansas, U.S., Saudi Arabia, the Sultanate of Oman on the Persian Gulf, and now she resides in Melbourne, Florida. And I'd love to tell you more about Jerry, but let me bring her on. Everybody, please welcome Jerry Blanchard. Nice to see you, Jerry. Let me go ahead and make sure you're unmuted. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you. It's an honor. It's a true honor to be able to share a screen with you because I've known you for a few years, and you've been my mentor, and it's been a good thing through these trying times. As travel agents, WPN has kept me going.
Yeah, we know each other a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
so thank
Jerry,
you.
I love how you pivoted during COVID. If we can just, as an aside, talk about that, because the travel industry, like the restaurant industry, was pretty much decimated by the pandemic.
Correct.
But you pivoted and you took your ability and your gift of being able to speak 5 languages.
Right.
And you changed your business around a little bit. You want to share what you were doing in terms of the global conversational and how that was created?
Without a doubt. What happened is when I realized that we were on hold and all we were doing for the past year was refunding all of our clients, booking and rebook. I mean, that was the only thing we were doing. I was alone in the office, and through you guys, through WPN, made me think, what else can I do besides just kind of losing my career, if you will, or waiting for it to come back. So very often I didn't realize I had such a blessing to be able to speak the 5 languages, and I pivoted and I started putting a website together and to teach Spanish and French because I'm fluent in those languages. I also speak Creole and Italian, but to be able to teach it is what I've done, and hopefully it's gonna grow because it's something that I can always do through the internet, which was another blessing. The Zoom.
Right.
I had to learn how to use Zoom. So yes, after 26 years of traveling and sending people around the world, it was quite of a pivot. But I'm okay, and I want to give homage to WPN because you guys have really, in my darker days, when this was happening, just to always be upbeat, and that's so important. And yes, so I thank you for that publicly.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad you're part of this community of positive thinking, like-spirited women who come together to make a difference with their gifts and their talents. And you certainly have quite the gifts and talents
thank you.
When it comes, especially when it comes to your ability to deal with and work with all different types of people as an entrepreneur, as an international humanitarian, and having lived all over the world. So you've probably seen interesting things when it comes to racism.
Yes. And I will tell you from the beginning, and I have to acknowledge that my father, also born and raised in Haiti, but you have to understand, I came also from Haiti, but mixed, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother was from France. And my grandfather was from Haiti, met her when he was studying medical school, Sorbonne in Paris, and brought her back to Haiti in 1900 on a boat. I want you to know. So here it is. Of course, my father then, grew up in Haiti, met my mother, who's English and German descent, and here I am. So yes, we're mixed, but we never, like you said before, never realized that race was an issue. Never, never, never. Because in Haiti, there's very dark to very light. and we were all together in my own family. There's 400 members, and I have blondes and I have very dark, but it was never an issue. So what happened is when I was growing up, my mother was also a tour operator, would take one of us at a time to Europe and to travel. And that's how I learned the business, if you will. I didn't know I was in training then, but I used to be around all different types because we would go to Germany, France, wherever, but never was it brought up to our attention. Oh, well, we have to be a certain way. But I will tell you that when Haitians traveled, they were always impeccable, very nicely dressed. And I remember as a child, people would always stop and say, "Who are these people?" So I am very proud of my roots in that sense that it was, I guess we distinguished ourselves in the way we carried ourselves, our education, because we were raised with the European way. And but I will tell you then to come back to my father. He always told us. He says, never, never, never look at the color of your skin and use it as an excuse. It's what you have upstairs, your brain that God gave you, that you will make it in this world. And I remember leaving for Kansas. In I had two children already. My husband happens to be French descent, yeah, Blanchard, and we arrived. We were going to Kansas. Imagine from the islands to the bread basket of the United States. And I arrived, but before we went to Haiti to say goodbye to my parents, because at this 1970s, it was like going behind God's face. We were going so far. And he says, "Remember what I've told you. Never be disrespected because of the color of your skin." I have never forgotten that. And do you know when I arrived in Kansas, they didn't know how to handle me. My husband was in a visible airport director and the industrial park. They didn't quite know where I fitted. And I will tell you that once they realized that I taught Spanish. I worked with the Catholic school with the migrant program. A lot of Spanish speaking kids to transition them into the English speaking world. And then I taught Spanish at the university and all that. And all of a sudden, I was okay. So I was so okay that the daily paper called me one day and said, "Miss Blanchard, I think we need to make they told me a feature. You should be the Sunday feature." And the rest is history. And I remember my father says, "Okay, Dad, can you believe it? In Kansas, you have to understand." So I'll never forget that. And
Right.
I was a center, yeah, the feature.
In the
And
1970s in Kansas.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you were you one of the few people of color where you lived?
That lived where I lived because in those days it was colored, or at the time was called colored people, black
Right,
people
right.
were in maintenance. They were in the service department, and all of a sudden I arrived with my husband who's French and my two kids, and they and I have no regrets. I just had to prove to them that I was like they were. I was educated like they were. And it took a while because at first my husband was invited to the country club and all that for the city council meetings. And the wives sometimes were invited, but I was not. But it was okay. And it's little by little, I gained their trust and their confidence. And I became okay. To this day, we have good friends in Kansas. Yeah.
So
Because,
your husband has white skin,
yeah,
Caucasian,
he's white. He's
and
Caucasian.
right, and you're, beautiful caramel color, I would
I
say,
am.
right?
I am because the mixture of
Right,
my
you're
father.
mixed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
your
mix.
father, your grandparents, I mean, it goes way
Yeah.
back. And
Yeah.
isn't it interesting? And I thought the same thing when Obama was president. You know, all of that other heritage, the English, the German, the French
Right.
is totally subjugated by the color of your skin.
Right. Right.
Everything is just, look at her, she's a black woman. And now that you're seen as a black woman, you had to prove your
Correct.
intelligence.
Correct.
Yeah,
In those days, in the
in those
1970s.
days. So what are you
Yeah.
seeing now
Yeah.
as you look back in, because
Yeah.
we've been around for a while, we lived
Right.
through the civil rights movement, we lived through um, all of the changes that have happened. And then it got kind of quiet in the 80s and
Correct.
90s. The issue became putting black men in jail. right? That's the next thing that happened, and vilifying all black people as crackheads, right?
Right,
That was what we saw over and over and over again.
right.
And now there's a rebirth
Correct.
in the
Right.
civil rights movement.
Yeah.
So, what are you, especially now, and with the last 2 years, with the changes in the election, what's your experience been the last few years?
I think what my father instilled in all of us was so strong that I never think about it anymore. I don't, it's like, okay, I'm who I am. And my expertise is taking people around the world, groups. And, I took a whole group of a black community out of our church, through Italy, and never even had a thought that maybe we would have an issue. And we did not. We didn't expect issues to have problems. In fact, I don't, I tell my people that just show up and I take care of everything. So there too, I didn't expect it. And we acted just fine. And they react to you the same way. But if we showed fear, or if we showed, that we were a little bit less, I think maybe sometimes we bring onto ourselves, what we do not desire. But in my case now, I don't even think of it. But I will tell you something. My grandchildren, my son then married now. Uh, I call her Lily White from Wyoming. She's lovely. She's very fair. So the
She's
kid,
very right.
she's Lily White, and my grandkids then took more after her. Do you know that only now he's 16, 17, and the other one's 14. Only now do they ask me, says, Memi, I want to show my friends that you are from Haiti. Never was an issue before, but they're hearing the conversation. So one day she was on the phone, she says, I need to FaceTime you because they don't believe that you are who you are, that their grandmother would be colored or black or whatever you want to call it. So it's only recently at 15 and 17, like you said, that it's like the rebirth. Never was an issue for them, never has been. And so I said, and so I see it that it's a shame. It's a shame because there's no need for that. Like your author, there's no race in my world. We're all one and the same, all children of God. And so, but these are things that I'm picking up right now because we're more aware. But I am very proud of being
Yeah.
from Haiti. I'm very proud of my heritage, and I do tell people when they meet me for the first time, I said I am from Haiti because Haiti has such a stigma on it. They think that all
It
people.
does.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And there's a
It
lot of us
does.
that are educated and well prepared, to face life anywhere in the world. When I lived in the Middle East, for 7 years, I raised the kids there, and the Arabs with us got along just fine. And they didn't know, they showered us with gifts before leaving because we had done so much. My husband was project director, and I went about, redoing the compound and redoing the civil department recreation hall and on and on. And they showered us with gold, my bracelets, so
Yay.
yeah. But
What if,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
no,
Go
Trish,
ahead.
I believe what you project is what you get back in return.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I do believe.
And I have to say that many of the people that I've spoken with and invited to be on the show, they say, I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. I get what I give, I put out the best, and
Yes.
I just expect the best. But when I think about that, you were married to a white man
Right.
and you lived here in the 70s and 80s. I mean,
Right.
that must have been an interesting thing. I was married to a Jewish guy. Now, both of us were white, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
him being Jewish and me not being Jewish, I
Wow.
would hear what people say about Jews. And I would go, wait a
Right.
minute. That's my
Right.
husband you're talking about.
Right.
So,
And
you know,
sometimes people don't realize it's
no,
almost like it's by rote, they just repeat. And so it's very sad, I think, because
yeah,
I could have been a victim of this way of thinking, but I give, homage to my father, who
yeah,
knew better and was, told us never feel lesser of a person.
That's
You know,
great.
and all of us are like
How
that.
many kids were in your family?
Four,
Oh,
four.
four. Us
And,
too.
yeah, yeah. And my brother's still in Haiti, and my sister, and I have another sister in Miami, and
So
we all
how's your family in Haiti doing now?
they're doing okay. The first earthquake affected them more, and we lost homes and all that. But now in the southern part, it did not affect us physically, but the whole country is affected. And we lost our president who was assassinated. So
Right.
yeah, yeah. So now I'm working with an orphanage. We have an orphanage that we're trying to move the kids to a nicer place. And oh no, the list is long.
I know. And I
The list
don't
is
know why Haiti can't get a break. I mean, hundreds of years over and over again of strife. So my heart goes out to your family. I
Thank
do
you.
hope they're okay. And
Yeah, and they're trying. We're giving back, as much as we can.
yeah,
And from Melbourne, we have an association that's helping the orphanage, so we're working nonstop. And I'm ever so grateful. People are always ready. Americans are so giving. And when I say Americans, I'm an American too now. But I mean, when I came into this country, always ready to give, always open. And with the migrant program, I used to collect coats and jackets and all that for the Mexicans who came to work at the National Beef. Always giving. I mean, the car used to be so full. So yeah, listen, when they ask me to say the Pledge of Allegiance, I say it with such pride, probably more so than other Americans, because I know what it means to be here in this country.
yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And you all have accepted me, and I'm grateful for that too.
Yeah, we love you. Are you kidding me?
Thank
We love you. So,
thank
one of
you.
the things I always like to ask before we go is, what would you say to someone who is affected by racism? Maybe people speak to them with racial slurs. Maybe they feel disrespected. What do you say to people? And what do you say to the people who just don't get it?
You just don't get it. I said, first I say, you're not the problem. They have the issue. Always the other person. Know who you are. Know who you stand for. Know your values. And it will show after a while. Don't try to say instead, oh no, I don't dare speak out. And I will tell you, I speak out when I'm asked. I don't go out of my way either to make us, be loud and no. I know who I am, and I think by example and the way I carry myself, whether the way I dress or I speak or whatnot, I will get the message across. And I tell people never, never let yourself be, a lesser person because you have so much to offer. And very often that's what happens. I say, oh no, I'm not good enough. Are you kidding? But I will tell you, WPN has taught me a lot too. Okay, so I've grown. I've grown as well because I probably was a little bit more intimidated before. Now I speak out, so I do.
Yes,
And so I'm very grateful for that.
that's good. I love your advice that your dad gave you, and that's no one can disrespect you unless you're
Right,
disrespecting yourself.
right, correct,
And it's an
correct.
inside job,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's an
yeah.
inside job.
Right. So,
Thank you so
yeah,
much. I
it's a
so appreciate
pleasure.
you having lived all over the world and your vast
Yeah.
experience. And the fact that you just, you let it roll off and it is what it is, and nobody can take me down unless I let them. That's a great attitude.
Correct,
That's
correct.
the way
And
to
I'm
be.
so, but Trish, it's true. It's every day. If you believe in yourself and attract law of attraction, I'm a big believer. I think good things will come out, and hopefully, if we give that message around ourselves and all that, that it will then, become the law of the land, and we'll all
Yes.
be better for it. So
Well, and
thank
it
you.
happens
Yeah.
person by person, doesn't it? I mean,
Right.
this social construct that
Yeah.
is, I mean, this, I'm telling
Yeah.
you, ladies and gentlemen, this book really lays it out. It's
Yeah.
not that we are racist, it is that we live in a social construct that creates racism.
Correct.
The individuals aren't necessarily racist. We say and do things that we don't even know, they're so unconscious.
Right.
I was watching a tennis match last night with Francis Tiafoe. He's an American of color, and he was awesome. And he's a great player, and I've been following him for a while. And I was with someone watching the game, and after he won, the person said to me, well, he's going to be really good. Hopefully, he won't get into any trouble, you know. And I'm like,
Wow.
why did
Why?
you say that? If
Why?
he was a
Why? Yeah.
white guy, would you
Mm,
have said that?
yeah.
He was like,
Correct.
well, you know what I mean? I'm like, no, I don't know what you mean.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. That
Right.
was not meant as a racist comment.
Right.
It was an unconscious,
Right.
because I've been socialized as white and I see on TV Black people getting in trouble and going to jail. That was the first thought that that person said. And that person is not racist, right?
Correct.
But it's the system that creates the racism. So
And the
that's
actions.
what
Yeah.
we're trying to deal with here,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what we can't see, what we can't see. And he wouldn't have seen that if I didn't hear it, if I hadn't been working on being anti-racist.
Good for you. We
Yeah,
thank you.
well, I'm not
Yeah.
even saying it to pat
Yeah.
myself on the back. I'm saying it because I've educated myself, especially in the last year and a half. And I'm
Mhm.
reading and I'm learning and I'm seeing. And a mind once expanded can't return, right? That's what they say. So I so appreciate you, Jerry, being on the show
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you for your point of view. I'm with you 100%.
So
You
such a
respect
pleasure.
you, and you just go on, and everyone else will
I'm
respect you
going.
as well.
Trish, just as a FYI, Osaka, that girl, the tennis
Yes,
girl,
Naomi Osaka.
Naomi Osaka is half Haitian. Her father's from Haiti,
Oh, I didn't know she was.
but they were separated, and the mother went back to Japan and raised her there. But she did go to
Ah,
Haiti. Yeah, she's half Haitian. Just that. Yeah,
well, again, it's a
yeah.
subjugation. Now all she's seen as is Black.
Right, right,
Right.
exactly. So
She's
she's
Asian, she's American,
yeah,
she's Haitian,
right,
but all she's seen is Black.
right.
And so that whole thing, I mean, it's like we got to start realizing that Black is not a heritage.
I mean, really,
You know, it's the
other.
same thing as if
It's other.
the world was separated by tall
Yeah,
people and short people, same thing.
right, right.
So,
What a
anyway,
pleasure.
thank you,
Thank
my
you. Yeah.
friend. Thank you for
Thanks,
being with us.
Trish.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank
Bye.
you all. Share.
Yeah.
Jerry, have a
Right.
fantastic day. Thank you
Thank
all
you.
so
And
much.
everybody
We'll
watching,
see you
thank you for
again for
listening.
another episode.
You bet. Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
everyone. Bye bye.